Welcome to One America News Investigates. I'm Monica Paige. Vice President Kamala Harris entered the presidential race 4 months ago, and the selection process was anything but traditional. No votes, no primary, no democratic process or practice. The result was an immediate sugar high. Democrats were unable to hide their excitement about a Harris presidency after President Biden cratered in the polls following his disastrous June 27th debate performance. But the joy and vibes that powered the Harris campaign for the first few months have grown stale. With less than 30 days until the election, Harris's support is experiencing a dramatic decline. Recent polling indicates a significant drop in her numbers, sparking concern among Democrats. Between flip-flopping on numerous policies and strategies and presenting herself as the change candidate,
it is time to turn the page because America is ready to chart a new way forward. Ready for a new and optimistic generation of leadership. Well, folks, it's time to turn the page.
Questions are raised about her credibility since she has been in office for the last 3.5 years.
I have a plan to lower the cost of living for America's families. I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan.
Vague promises, unclear details leave many asking how will those plans will effectively address critical issues plaguing our country. In this edition of OAN Investigates, we dive into why Harris and Democrats alike are in full-blown panic mode, and how Harris, the damsel in distress, is calling for backup to save her crumbling crusade. Polls show that the American public views the Biden-Harris administration as an outright failure, failing to deliver lower costs after a once-in-a-generation pandemic, failing to close the southern border, and failing to foster peace in the Middle East. As a result, Harris has tried to distance herself from Joe Biden.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden.
When she's asked if there's anything she would have done differently from Biden over the last 3.5 years, Harris said she wouldn't change a thing.
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
Since insisting that she wouldn't change a thing, a new NBC News poll shows that 45% of registered voters feel Biden's policies have hurt them, while only 25% claimed Biden has helped them. Bad news for Harris, and she knows it. As a result, Harris has consistently painted herself out as the change candidate, telling voters she represents a new generation of leadership.
And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. A chance to chart a new way forward. And together, we will chart a new way forward.
She can't run on her own administration's record because the data shows Americans do not view their current situation favorably. So she's pivoted to the Democrat Party's favorite tactic, blame Trump.
Donald Trump tried to cut Social Security and Medicare. Donald Trump handpicked members of the United States Supreme Court to take away reproductive freedom. And now he brags about it.
Harris knows that voters want change, so she's trying to make the case that she represents that desired change, even if it undermines her own record as VP.
I went down to the border, and let me tell you, these border agents are working around the clock. They're trying as hard as they can. They need more resources. I have taken on the cartels. I've prosecuted the cartels. I understand the serious nature of this issue and the need to fix it. And prices are still too high. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%.
A recent ABC News poll shows that 74% of voters want Harris to forge a new path away from Biden's policies, but only 33% believe she will actually have different policies than Biden. Another reason why Harris can't separate herself from the 46th president, she's continuously touted and praised his record.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office. Whether it be the person I see in the Oval Office who is meeting with heads of the military and the intelligence community and in the Situation Room, ensuring the safety of America.
And even Biden himself said Harris had free rein during his presidency to implement change.
And as vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy.
But she didn't. And now voters don't trust her. The polls show they see right through her manipulative messaging. For instance, look at Pennsylvania. A new poll from Rasmussen Report shows Trump up by 3 points in the Keystone State. And that same poll showed that 75% of likely voters in Pennsylvania think there needs to be major change in the federal government. Similarly, a Marquette Law School poll showed that 79% of Americans think the country is on the wrong track. The data shows that if Harris doesn't prove to voters she is the major change candidate she says she is, she will be on a crash course to a November loss. And with less than a month to go, time is running out. So when we come back, flip-flopping policies and shifting strategies, Harris is struggling to find consistency in her campaign. We discuss after the break. Welcome back. The apparent inconsistencies with Vice President Kamala Harris and her campaign began as soon as she entered the presidential race. She has changed her stance on policies including guns.
We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away.
Fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020.
And even the southern border.
Around his vanity project called a wall.
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally.
And that's not even close to a comprehensive list. In total, she has shifted on at least a dozen different policies, leaving the American people wondering where she really stands on any of these issues. Even her own campaign website didn't have a policy page for the first 6 weeks, adding to the confusion, but had at least 7 links to donate to the ticket. But it's not just policies she lacks consistency on. She's been overhauling and shifting her campaign strategy as well. At first, Harris replicated the Biden basement strategy, short on policies and big on vibes. Harris ducked and dodged interviews left and right, allowing legacy media to create this sugar high. As her poll numbers went up, her reluctance to do media did too.
The Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far.
But the initial Harris sugar high of joy and vibes has gone stale. And Harris realized that avoiding the press the way she was at the start wouldn't work in the long run. She would need to put in the work to win over voters in November. And thus, a media blitz was born. After waiting an entire month to do her first unscripted sit-down interview, Harris caught the media bug. Informal interviews on shows like Call Her Daddy, Howard Stern radio show, Hairstyle Talk with BuzzFeed all became the norm. But why the sudden shift in strategy? Former senior advisor to Vivek Ramaswamy, Tricia McLaughlin, says campaigns change course based on one thing.
I think, A, she's seeing her internal polling numbers, which are not looking good, even from a popular vote standpoint, but definitely not from these battlegrounds. So this is an effort to make inroads there with moderate Republicans or disaffected Republicans or even independents. But also, I think that this is partially about shoring up her own base. I think a lot of her home, her base, doesn't have a lot of confidence in her anymore.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, even if that means walking into the lion's den.
If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
While making her rounds, Harris also switched up her messaging entirely. Gone were the accusations that President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance were weird.
Well, it's just plain weird.
And by the way, don't
you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird?
Where's the plan? He doesn't have one, and these weird ideas, and I'll stay to that.
And in were attacks on President Trump's age and mental cognition, accusing him of being exhausted and using the same rhetoric that applies to President Joe Biden.
Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged. I've been hearing reports that his team at least is saying he's suffering from exhaustion. Is he fit to do the job?
She's gone so far to even demand Trump release his cholesterol levels.
Kristen, the American people don't care about the cholesterol level of Donald Trump. The medical records are irrelevant.
And other medical documents relating to his health, something Joe Biden never did once over the last 3.5 years in office. This, despite that since October 1st, Trump has held more than 30 in-person events that spanned across more than 25 cities. Perhaps she wouldn't be changing her tune or projecting her party's insecurities so often if she knew she had the lead. But at the end of the day, Harris still supports the same radical left ideologies, and her allies within her own party know it.
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
When the Harris team accuses President Trump of being mentally unstable or claims he's running a basement campaign, the American people simply aren't buying it. A Harvard-Harris poll shows Trump up 48% to Harris's 46% in 6 of the 7 swing states, and is leading 44% to Harris's 40% among independents. Atlas Intel, the most accurate polling outfit from the 2020 election, shows Trump leading Harris by 3% in the popular vote. This just goes to show Harris's manipulative messaging, her malfunctioning media stints, and her shifting campaign strategy is losing major credibility among voters. Still to come, what are the characteristics that define what it means to be an effective leader? And what happens when you have someone in power that doesn't fit the description? Learn more when we return. Welcome back. Kamala Harris's brief sugar high came to the surprise of many people, especially since she was labeled the least popular vice president in half a century.
New NBC News reporting reveals Kamala Harris holds the record for the worst vice presidential rating in NBC polling history at a net negative 17 points. Yikes.
Vice President Harris is possibly the most unpopular VP in American history.
Harris lacks the qualities needed to be an effective leader. One of the central issues surrounding Harris is her ambiguous values, which she insists haven't changed.
The most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed.
While her apparent flip-flops and anonymous walkbacks make it challenging for voters to understand her values, it's easy to see what values she's lacking. Harris evades responsibility for her actions. During her Fox News interview, she refused to apologize to the families of people killed by illegal aliens that entered the country under her watch.
So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced.
Instead, she blamed President Trump for allegedly making Republicans kill a bipartisan border security bill.
And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
But Harris leaves out crucial details. What she leaves out is that the bill included unnecessary spending, including requiring taxpayers to fund deportation defense attorneys for unaccompanied minors, and would give $7 billion to fund sanctuary jurisdictions and non-government organizations that help to facilitate mass immigration. President Biden, with the help of Harris, signed 94 executive actions reversing half of Trump's border policies that kept Americans safe. She could have reversed course, bringing Trump-era policies like Remain in Mexico back, but she didn't, and still hasn't. Harris also refuses to take accountability for the failed Afghanistan pullout on August 30th, 2021. She refers to an agreement that came about under the Trump administration between the United States and the Taliban that said U.S. soldiers would withdraw from Afghanistan under certain conditions. However, a report from the House Foreign Affairs Committee showed that the Taliban violated the agreement by continuing to attack U.S. troops, making the agreement null and void. This action had disastrous results, killing 13 service members and leaving behind over $7 billion in U.S. weapons in the hands of the Taliban. She even seemed to take pride in being the last person in the room during this decision.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
But this decision prioritized optics over security and her personal ambitions over safety. It's even her own staff who take issue with her leadership and decision-making skills. With a 92% turnover rate, her office is a revolving door. Only 4 members out of nearly 50 people listed in her staff have been in her office for the entirety of the vice presidency. According to a recent report, those who have left blame her prosecutorial tone, which they found challenging. They also blamed her cautious and delayed decision-making skills for their exit. But it's not just her staff who have issue with her. Her own constituents from when she was senator didn't want her to be president when she ran in the Democratic primary in 2019. Only 8% of Democrats in the state of California thought their senator should be president of the United States. Slate magazine wrote in 2019, quote, "Voters were never able to figure out who she was or what particular problem facing Americans she cares about most." And the Washington Post wrote this in an article about her dropping out in 2019. Quote, "Harris was in many ways still introducing herself." Fast forward to 2024, and it's not just her failure to introduce herself, it's that her campaign strategy isn't genuine either. Harris has been caught saying the same thing at multiple rallies.
And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you, and God bless you. Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? And when we fight, we win.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been, you know?
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
And changing her accent depending on where she is and the demographic she's speaking to.
Oh, I love you back.
Hello to all my divine 9 brothers and sisters. And my sorors.
You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time. We campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P, the plan. And then the environment is such that we're expected to defend the plan. Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and I hope your family is okay and your home is okay.
Aside from her faulty leadership skills, Harris's blatant change in accent, tone, and persona to fit the political landscape is just another reason many question her authenticity. When we return, Harris's crusade is crumbling, so she's calling in backup to help salvage what's left of her campaign. Stay with us. Since being installed as a 2024 presidential candidate, Kamala Harris has been running a disingenuous, inauthentic, and seemingly crumbling campaign. She's been heavily focused on catering to women by enhancing a more feminist approach to the campaign, weaponizing the issue of abortion.
Now, I mean, seriously. So, first of all, no, Donald, everybody did not want Roe v. Wade to be overturned.
And that abortion-centered campaign message appears to be alienating a key demographic: men. A Pew Research Center poll found that 51% of male voters support President Trump and 43% support Harris. Additionally, an October 2024 New York Times Siena College poll shows Harris's support is down among black males. The poll shows 70% of black men would vote for Harris, which is down from Biden, who won 87% of the black male vote in 2020. So she's calling on a few likely male allies to help drum up support. Former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. And of course, her vice presidential pick, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Obama's approach is to seemingly blame black men, accusing them of sexism for not voting for Kamala.
We have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, it seems to be more pronounced with the brothers.
Meanwhile, Bill Clinton struggles to defend her record, appearing to say the quiet part out loud.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
If only we had the border czar herself to vet those illegal aliens properly. And if that wasn't bad enough, Tim Walz suited up in his pheasant hunting gear to try and woo the male vote, but appeared to struggle loading his gun.
Yeah. That's my theory. And it never fits quite right. It never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you get it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap.
For a campaign that has seemingly run on the boss girl, independent women who don't need men vibes, and blaming misogyny for not getting enough male support, it's no surprise the Harris team is depending on help from men to boost the campaign before November. So will her knights in shining armor be enough to salvage this crumbling campaign of hers? Time will tell. I'm Monica Paige. Stay tuned, stay informed every Saturday and Sunday for new editions of OAN Investigates. Until next time, thanks for watching.